In 1952, we came up over that notch, and I saw the balsams, and I was just mesmerized. And I said to myself at the age of 10 or 12 or something, I'm going to work there someday. And when it came time to get a job, I wrote to them, and I got a job. And I never quit my summer job.
It was amazing. I loved it. It was very much a family atmosphere. It was a great first job. Everyone was very welcoming, very, very friendly, really helped me. And it was a great job. When I wasn't working, I got to ski.
I knew from the beginning. I was just mesmerized with the whole environment, with the food and the people, the whole culture. I guess it was most comparable in those days to a circus. That feeling of living separate and apart from the rest of the real world, the rest of the normal world. I just fell into the whoop and the warp of it, to the rhythm of it, to what was expected, to where you were cast in the caste system, if you will, and then how you could grow.
Before we go to work every day, we would pay our supervisor. When I was in the dining room, it was $10 a week to the maitre d'. When I was on the bell staff, it was $2 a day to Ted Lips, the superintendent of service. In the bar staff, I paid 10% of my gratuities to the head bartender, who then paid out to the bartenders what we had paid him, et cetera. So this is how the pay system was worked. It was a kind of indentured system.
Where you ate and where you slept was determined by your rank. And one of my goals was to have my own room, and then after I got my own room, I wanted to have my own bath. And the only way to get that was to keep rising up through the ranks. But there were 6 places that you could eat as an employee. The first was the cafeteria, which is universally called the zoo. And then the next was called side hall, which is where the mid-level staff ate. And there were 3 of those. And even they were ranked by who you were. And my first job was as a side hall waiter, which I thought was a busboy. And I was in the 3rd ranked side hall. So I started at the bottom of the bottom. And then the next year I went back and I was in charge of the side hall. And then I went on to become maitre d' and so on and so on and so forth. And then the other places you could eat were, if you were super high up, you ate in the main dining room. And then the kitchen employees, the cooks, had their own tables that were set up for meals, and they had their own server. And so they would sit, and the food would all be there, and then their server would bring them their meals, and then she would clear off the table, and the men would put away the tables, but the dishwashers ate in the zoo. So it was all by rank.
It was very much a culture of you were welcoming them into your home.
We're in the smiles business, and our whole function as an industry is to make people happy. And if you can't make them happy, you're doing the wrong thing.
The people had their own specific demands, and they were not hesitant to ask the staff to meet their demands.
Actually, I try to make it a point, especially the guests that came back year after year. A lot of them would ask for me because I knew what they wanted.
I learned what service was, and I learned that service was anticipating what a guest wants and then fulfilling it without a fuss. This gentleman had to sleep north-south and not south-north, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and Steve said, well, the bed was, the pillow was here. He said, well, could you put the pillow at the other end? Oh, he said, I never thought of that. And he did.
So it was just a great experience to know that, yes, the golfer was going to owe me something for the round. One bag for 18 holes was $5. So if he gave me another $1, that was a 20% tip. And I looked forward to pleasing him well enough to earn that extra $1. And I also learned that if he didn't give me the $1, it said more about him than it did me. And at 13, that's quite a lesson to learn.
And it was raining, and he did 2 or 4 bags, and all afternoon, and he was talking about being hospitable and being well-trained and so forth, and they came back to the clubhouse, and he cleaned off the clubs, and he put them in the station wagon, and they tipped him very nicely, and he said, "Is that all?" Meaning, "Is that all I can do for you?" And the wife of the gentleman took it to be, "Aren't you going to give me some more?" And doubled up the tip.
I ended up with a roommate by the name of Frankie, who was from South Boston. He'd been there 3 summers before. And on my first day, I smoked my first cigarette. I learned how to throw a knife. And Frankie was my protector, so to speak. And indeed, we went a few weeks. Every Tuesday, Frankie would go down and pick up our fresh linen. And he'd come back up and he'd collect $2 from me. And on the 4th week, I learned that the linen was free each week.
But it was grand in the way it was run. It was beautiful. We had people that would come here from for the summer season. I remember Mrs. Douglas MacArthur was here for the summer, and I met her. That was great. First season, the first winter that I worked there back in 66, 67, it was the first winter they were open. It was the winter that George Romney had announced his presidency. He was running for president. And he came, and they thought it would be a good idea. They hired a baby elephant to come into the hotel for Mrs. Romney to ride on into the Switzerland of America ballroom. And one of my first jobs there, believe it or not, was to clean up after that elephant. They needed somebody to be down, and they stored the elephant in the tunnel and brought it back up through into the main lobby, and I'd have to follow that elephant to make sure anything that dropped got picked up.
How did that go?
That was interesting. But I was the new kid on the block. I was the new employee on that weekend, so.
It's not a Monday to Friday 9-to-5 job, let's put it that way. So you work when the guests are here, nights and weekends and holidays. Your guests need to feel always welcome. They always need to feel that you are happy to see them. I spend, countless hours going through guest lists and arrivals, making sure I'm recognizing everybody for their anniversaries or for their birthdays or welcoming them back. You can't forget a single one.
You would go down in the morning and go to the front desk and you'd look at the list of people who were coming in that day. You'd go out and say, "Wow, Mrs. Jones, it's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you since last February. And how is Jean, the daughter, and your husband Frank? Are they with you?" "Oh, yes." And so you would do that kind of thing and just make them completely at ease, if you will, and feel very, very good.
One of my mentors taught me, and it continues to be true, no building in the world can do anything for you but a good staff can. And I keep being drawn back to the fact that a successful hotel is going to be judged and stay successful by the commitment of its staff to making its guests feel welcome.